Okay guys, wanted to do another video today and want to show you my e-bike that I have just completed converting a regular bike to an e-bike, and I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about that. For about 5 years I've wanted to do an e-bike conversion. My father-in-law had an old 50s Columbia bike that he had actually purchased new, and I was thinking that would make a really cool conversion. However, it was just too much of a rusty mess. He had stored it in his damp basement, so that didn't work out very well. So then I decided to finally pick another bike, and I chose a giant mountain bike and purchased that used. And actually, as I got into it a little bit, I didn't like the arrangement of the rear dropouts, the forks where the hub motor was going to go in, because I'd chosen to go with a hub motor, a rear drive hub motor, rather than a front hub or the mid drive. All these have their advantages and disadvantages, but I wanted to do that. I had decided on the rear hub motor, and for that you need a pretty stout arrangement on the back forks, the dropouts. So anyway, I got rid of that bike and I chose this bike, which was I got for about half price, 350 bucks. This is was a $700 bike. It's a 2021 Trek Marlin 5, and the gentleman had bought it. Didn't live up here, but he was working up here, and he was doing some mountain biking, and when the job was over, he decided that he was going to ship this thing back to Texas, where he came from, and found out it was too expensive to ship. So he had it all tore apart completely, and I purchased it at half price. Had to reassemble it. Not a big deal, except for the fork was a little bit of work trying to figure out where all the washers and shims and stuff went to get the right load on the front forks. But I got it done, and then I started buying the parts for this thing. So this particular model has what I liked, and it's the reason I chose it. Right here, you had two drilled and tapped holes. I believe they're 5mm into the frame. Already had the boss on that. Now it only has that on the one side. Unfortunately, I'd like to have put dual torque arms on it, but I was happy to get at least one side that would be nice and secure. And I ended up, you know, all the torque arms that you look at on eBay and all the other internet websites and stuff seem to be pretty chintzy. And a lot of them are two-piece, where they bolt together in the middle, and then they use stainless steel hose clamps around the forks. And it just, to me, it just looks like shit. And it certainly can't be a very, very stout job, very rigid job. So I went ahead and designed a little piece for this. And that's what this piece is right here that you're seeing. And I had that laser cut. I made a template up of what I wanted, and a drawing as well. And I gave it to the shop, and they actually made me 5 of them up, because the next 4 were really cheap once they get the programming done. So I went ahead and got 5 of those made. And I couldn't put one of these on the other side, but I did end up putting a torque arm on the other side. It's not as stout as this one. This is a 1/4 inch wide cold finish plate, and I even tightened up the tolerance on the slot or the drive square, whatever you want to call it, in the center, because the ones that you get online, I did purchase one and it was so loose, it was just ridiculous. Anyway, I had this made, and I'll show you. Walk over here. This is that particular piece, one of the other ones right here. Had this made, and then after installing it on, I loaded up the wheel the direction that I wanted it to go. And then I used transfer punches. If you're familiar with them, you can get a set of those at Harbor Freight or MSC or any of the machining places. And I just cut them off. I have 2 different sides here, because this is the other torque arm for the other side, and I'll show you that over here. It's right here. It's a little difficult to see. That right, oops, my bike fall over, right here. And I left these holes undrilled and tapped till after I mounted this, and I wanted to load the hub motor in a certain direction so that I knew that this thing was taking all the torque. Now this one doesn't extend out very long, which is not the best, but it's the only holes I had were these cargo rack drilled and tapped holes. There was nothing up here like on the other side. And if nothing else, this encapsulates the dropout so that, you know, if something would happen, that wheel can't come out because now it's closed in, it's boxed in. So going back to the other side, did the same thing here. I loaded the wheel up the way that I wanted to. And basically, I mean, if you think of a hub motor like a regular motor, this would be the housing that would generally be stationary and bolted to like a frame or, you know, a platform. And then the shaft would turn. Well, this is the opposite. So the shaft stays fixed, hopefully, and then the outside body turns. So every time you give this thing gas and torque on, this is trying to torque the opposite way the wheel's going. It's trying to like spin in that little slot that you have in this bike. And that slot wasn't designed to like carry that type of load on a regular bike. That's why you need a torque arm. And that's why I made my custom ones. And I actually built this, put it together, and then I ran this bike for about 25 miles and then disassembled it to see what kind of stress I was getting on the fork, dropout, and my torque arm. And I was actually showed 0 stress, so it's doing a really good job. These nuts on the axle, you have to be careful. You want this axle, I wish they'd make these axles a little longer, but you want them to stick out a little bit so you're getting full threads. And I was careful enough not to get too crazy with this, or I could have made this torque arm even thicker, but then I would sacrifice threads on my spindle coming out. Didn't want to do that. Now I have that spaced out. You can see the washers here. I had to buy some washers at Ace Hardware, and I had to actually use the Dremel and just clean out a few thousandths of an inch to get them to fit on. But they did a really nice job. And I made that so that it just behind this, let me see if I can, behind here, it just barely clears by like a few thousandths of an inch. And then it bolts on. Of course, I've got lock washers and everything on. And as I said, I think I already said I torqued this to 30 foot-pound. Same way at the other side. This one, I actually did not have to shim at all. There's no shims behind there because I shimmed it in here enough just to get it to clear here, and it worked out perfect there. I don't know if I'm getting that or not. It's a little sunny out. It's hard to take this video there. Okay, just to reiterate, guys, this particular, see if we can get that right so you can see it. This particular torque arm does have a couple small washers behind it to get that perfect so that I'm not stressing and trying to bend anything. That's something you got to be really careful with. So the other side, I didn't have to put anything behind the torque arm, just lock washers in the front. As I said, I believe these are 5mm, and then on the opposite side, which this side has those as well, those cargo holes, I believe they're 4mm. So, and they're standard metric threads. So that's what I did, and that's the crux of the problem with e-bikes, is getting that rear hub nice and secure so you don't have to worry about that thing coming off. But it's something you have to keep your eye on. Double check your torque occasionally. So, and again, these are the two pieces that I came up with. And then the two different transfer punches that I cut off with my Dremel at the proper length. You have to be very careful because on one of those, just to show you, on the large side, I stuck this in. Once I got this torque arm in, I had already slid this in, and I had it touching against the disc brake, and so that it couldn't go back any further. And I had just the point sticking out a little bit, okay? And I had blued up the back of my torque arm, and then I tapped it with a hammer where I wanted it, and then drilled the holes through the torque arm. And the same way on the other side, but I had to use the smaller, since it's a smaller drilled and tapped hole, I had used a different size transfer punch to get it as neat as possible. So it takes a little bit of work. You got to be, you know, the better you are at precision, the easier it is, and the better job that you'll get. So getting off of that, this, as I said, is a 2,000 watt motor, and it's a jaw pay. Okay, it's a jaw pay hub motor, and then it has a 45 amp controller, which is a nice black controller. I'd initially just mounted it to the rack because everybody says you shouldn't put it in a bag because it's going to get warm. And on my 25 mile test, I detected no warmth at all, really, to speak of. So I went ahead and put it in a bag. Makes it look better. Gives you a place to hide some of the wires if you have wires that are a little too long, don't know what to do with. And the battery I went with, this is my first time doing one. I went with this particular battery, which is a Halolong. It's a green Halolong. See if I can get there. I don't know if I'm getting that. Yeah, I think I am. So it's a Halolong. Anyway, it's a 48 volt. I didn't go with the 52 like a lot of people like to do. The 52 is only going to give you about 3 or 4 more mile an hour. It might give you a little more torque as well. But I stuck with the 48 because some people say that the LCD, this SW900, does not like the 52 volts. I didn't want to take a chance. I just went with the 48 volt. It is a 20 ampere hour battery. So what that means is you can get 20 amps. It can pull 20 amps for an hour. So if you're pulling 10 amps, you can go 2 hours. And all you got to do is do the math. If you're pulling 40 amps, you're only going to get a half hour out of it. So the BMS on this, which is the battery management system, that is, you know, your little board inside your batteries, that is only a 30 amp BMS in this battery. That's not really enough for this bike. It should have a 50 in it. I didn't pop for the extra money since I got this battery fairly cheap at 240 bucks. To go up to the 50, they charge you a lot more. Anyway, in the future, if and when this battery goes bad and I still have the bike, I'll probably go with one of the triangular batteries that they make that already have the Velcro on them. They're in a plastic container. Quite a few of those already have the 50 amp BMS on it, and I think it's 150 peak amp output on this. This is, I believe, a 60 amp plus or minus a couple amp peak power. So you do get full power, but it's only momentarily. So, and I know that because on this SW900 LCD, you'll have your wattage right here. Don't ask me why it shows 2614 right now, because it should be 0. As soon as you start the bike, though, start to go, it goes to 0. I don't know why it does that. Anyway, I can tell how many watts that I'm drawing there, and momentarily I've pulled over 2,000 watts with it, so I know that it's getting full power to the motor, at least momentarily. So that's you know, with your voltage at 48 volt, and then you just take that times your amperage. If you have a 50 amp BMS, then that gives you a little over 2,000 watts of power, which is enough for the wheel. As I said, theoretically I should have at least the 50 amp, probably 45 or 50 amp BMS in the battery. I don't have that, but it doesn't seem to suffer from that because this thing's like a rocket. The only thing I don't have hooked up on this yet, I do have the pedal assist sensor, which is a pretty nice little clean sensor. I have that mounted, but the cord is just a little short to connect up here to the controller. Now, I had it initially connected when I didn't have the controller in a bag, but then when I changed it, I moved it back a little bit, and it's a little short, so I had to order an extension cable for that, which it's coming from China. So I didn't want to wait to do the video because it's already getting ready to turn November up here and it's getting cold. I didn't want to be out here in the snow doing it. So I'm in Pennsylvania. Regardless, that's what we got going on. And it will do, this system's rated at 44 mile per hour. And I freewheeled it. I picked it up and held the throttle wide open, and that's exactly what it does, 44 mile an hour. Now, whether it'll do it under load, I'm not sure. I've only had it to like 33, 34 mile an hour, and that seemed awfully fast to me, particularly without a helmet on when I was doing it. So anyway, it definitely has a lot of torque, goes down the road very quickly. Even when you're rolling 15 or 18 mile an hour, you give her a little gas and give her a little throttle, and it just really has plenty of acceleration at that speed. Now, I bought a cheap headlamp system for it with the switch, and I tied that right into the battery, so you can turn it on and off here, and then you have a little buzzer there that's supposed to be a horn. It's not very friendly for a bike horn, but if you do it plenty in time, and you know, when you're coming up on someone, you don't wait till you're up on them to do the beeping, it's not too bad. And one other thing I wanted to touch on this bike, when people were doing the conversions, quite often they're not thinking about brakes. Well, this bike came with the hydraulic disc brakes, front and back. That's huge. I mean, this thing, you know, stops really well. These guys trying to do it with the regular rim brakes, I wouldn't trust that very far, but that's up to you guys. But it's just as important to be able to stop as it is to be able to go on these electric bikes, especially once you get more comfortable with them and run them faster. So that's just my 2 cents. I believe that I've covered everything. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. The bike turned out pretty good as far as I'm concerned. Very pleased with it. Yeah, I just wanted to share that with everyone, how to do a torque arm professionally rather than you know, go with these Chinese torque arms that just aren't worth a shit. Okay guys, till the next video.